Kia ora koutou. I'm Anna Richardson from Ara Institute of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand, or Aotearoa. It is my pleasure to welcome Mel Muriti, who is a colleague of mine, who has also had extensive experience working with Māori patients and their whānau or family in the community. So a very warm welcome, Mel. Thank you for agreeing to present to us via this webinar. And just if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kia ora, Anna. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Waio, ko Hikurangi toku maunga, ko Waiapu toko awa, ko Harauta toko waka, ko te raka, ko te whanau raka hoia toku hapu, ko Ngāti Porou toku iwi, ko Mel toku ingoa. So kia ora everyone, my name is Mel. I hail from the South Island, South Canterbury, but I actually whakapapa up to the North Island through Ngāti Porou. So yes, I've been nursing now for about 30 years, mostly within mainstream hospital medical, but for the past 7 years I worked in a kaupapa Māori organisation where I have a huge passion for Māori health in the community. I worked as a Welsh tamariki nurse and also as a rapa order disease state management nurse. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Mel. We thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about the Meihana model and what it includes, actually. So shall we begin with that? We teach this in the undergraduate program here at ARA as well.
So just a wee caveat, I do not speak for all Māori, so I can give I can talk about my own personal experience and how I relate to the Meihana model. So the Meihana model was set up for originally the doctors, so teaching into student doctors. And it's a kind of an expansion, I see it as an expansion of Te Whare Tapu Whā, which was created by Sir Mason Jury, which, if we can put up a visual of that, is the picture of a whare. And it talks about the 4 po of that whare. So te taha tinana, the physical side of everything for a person, te taha hinengaro, the emotional side, te taha wairua, the spiritual side, and then te taha whānau, so the supports that people have in place. For Māori, everything should be in balance. If something is removed from one of those 4 po is removed, then the house will collapse, which is the same for our people out in the community. So if all 4 po are nice and strong, then somebody is healthy, considered healthy and doing well. Yeah, so the Meihana model is kind of an expansion on that. So Māori, a lot of Māori really like Te Whare Tapu Whā. The Meihana model, I feel, is really good for those who may not know a lot about the Te Whare Tapu Whā, how deep it goes. So it expands it and it adds extra layers to it. So I like the Meihana model. A lot of Māori models of health will be based around visuals. And so with the Meihana model especially, it shows the double hold waka, or the waka hauroa, which is what Māori travelled from Hawaii to New Zealand in. And within that picture, there is the patient on one side of that double hold waka, and then the whānau on the other side of the double hold waka. And so the boat, the waka, is navigating towards Hauora, the island of health. And it also shows the 4 winds, so ngā hui whā, the 4 different winds, and there are 4 winds, obviously, north, south, east, west. And then also ngā rauma moana, which are the 4 currents, and New Zealand actually has 4 currents around it. So those winds and the current can affect the navigation of the boat, so it might knock you off path. And also the patient and the whānau being on those 2 hulls, they need to be working together, going at the same pace, going in the same direction to actually navigate the seas and the winds to make it to the island of Hauora or health. So those that model.
Oh, sorry. Now I'm speaking over you. So those currents, I think Indigenous people around the world will be able to identify with them because they're marginalisation, colonisation, and as we know, the ongoing impact of colonisation, it's never over really for Māori and Indigenous people, and racism and the impact of migration. So migration that's really moving into the cities and the impact that that had on Māori health. Māori were agrarian people mostly until colonisation, and they moved into the cities and lost a lot of their whānau or family connections.
Yeah.
And that still has a part to play today, doesn't it, in Māori health?
Absolutely. So there is a lot of disconnection out there nowadays, especially in the South Island. So North Island is a lot more connected. When you talk of migration as well, it can include when Māori travel from the North Island to the South Island. So we have a lot of families that are moving, especially post-earthquakes. There is a lot of jobs down in Christchurch with the rebuilding. So a lot of whānau moved down south. And it was a bit of a culture shock for them. Very different. What would you say?
I think I could say this very white down here in Christchurch in particular is it may not be that comforting for people Māori coming to Christchurch. It can seem very English here, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
As in our little city.
And different rules, different tikanga down here. So it can be quite a shock. So when I was working with a lot of Māori whānau, we had to consider that, which is really good about the Meihana model, because the Meihana model is an assessment tool which sits within the hui process. And it was created so that people would be able to identify and explore those Māori values, beliefs and experiences that individuals have. So, and also to recognise any inequalities or any inequities that the patient might have down here. So migration is a big part. Colonisation is huge. The statistics show, as with most Indigenous peoples, that Māori are more likely to have lower income, higher prison rates, all of those kind of things that can affect our families out there. Lower education rates as well. So the Meihana model is kind of looking at those experiences that Māori have had, whether they know it or not. Racism can be quite internalised within New Zealand as well, and not easily picked up on. So some Māori won't actually recognise it. So the other part of the Meihana model that I really like is the concepts of tile and iwi katoa, so tile is the physical environment, so that's looking at not only a person's home life, but also their work life, their work environment, and also the organisations or health professionals' environment. So making sure that it's friendly for Māori, making sure that you've got enough room for if they want to bring in their whānau, just being culturally safe, culturally sensitive, welcoming. It's actually really easy to do, but not a lot of people do it, which is a bit sad. And then iwi katoa is kind of looking at your organisational strengths. So some of the good things that are happening in our health system is a lot of organisations now are having tikanga policies put in place, which is really good. So it's starting to recognise some of those values that Māori have. And the hui process is actually probably a really good model to be reflecting as well. So the hui process is something that's taken from the world of Māori, so te ao Māori. Whenever there is a hui on the marae or somewhere like that, it's a process that's kind of followed. So there's steps to it. So there's always the mihi, which is welcoming people, telling people who you are, what you're there for. For Māori, like obviously easier for me, Māori are always trying to connect to each other in some way. So when I do a mihi to somebody who is Māori, Like we're trying to connect straight away as to who we are, where do we sit, did our ancestors, are we related? Because a lot of us are related. We can generally whakapapa back to each other somewhere in the line. And so once you can do that, it's like an instant connection and you can feel quite safe talking to that person. So saying who you are, what you're there for, then whakawhanaungatanga, which is exactly the same thing as like building those connections. So for Māori, if we're all together, you will often get, well, I will often get, for example, if I was going to meet, and especially kaumatua elder Māori, they will be asking me if I know somebody, and they will literally reel off a whole lot of different people until I say, yes, I recognise that person. And then they'll go, oh yeah, I know who you are now. That person is a good person, which means if they know you, they like you, then you're a good person too. So I can now trust you. So it's a little bit different for non-Māori when they're trying to introduce themselves. You need to try and build connections through other ways, which can be as simple as the weather outside, talking about the weather, talking about what Netflix TV series they're watching at the moment, talking about the rugby, anything like that. Once you find something that you have in common, then it balances that power balance that we naturally have as nurses.
Yeah, so that making a connection is so important. And I think as family nurses across the globe, we can really identify with the importance of that when we're meeting up with families, as that the need to make a connection. And, for one of the things that we need to take into account here in Aotearoa is that might mean sharing a little bit more about yourself than you would normally do in a more formal situation. So for example, I might, if Mel was the patient that I was caring for the day, I might tell her a little bit about where I came from myself and, where I grew up, and we're looking for connections so that, because those connections are so important for progressing the journey, the health journey for Mel and her family if she was a patient. So the next part is the kaupapa, isn't it?
So the kaupapa is where the Meihana model actually sits in the hui process, and so that's the assessment tools that you're doing. So any of the work that you're doing, whether it's blood pressures, whether it's physical assessments, all of that kind of stuff will fall under the kaupapa. So when you're following the hui process, Māori will naturally know where you're going to go, so they'll follow that process too. But the biggest and most important part is that whakawhanaungatanga. So building those, the trust with Māori. Often Māori may be quite hesitant to come into health services. They may have had previous bad experiences. Personally, I myself have had some pretty bad experiences within the health system, and our health system is pretty hard to navigate, even when you sit within it and you work within it. So when it isn't that easy, you will often not get very good buy-in. And I think that's pretty common anyway. Yeah. But so for Māori, that iwi katoa is pretty strong as well. So things that I would do as a nurse would be, I would often go with my clients to new services if I was going to refer them into something that I wasn't quite sure of myself. I would go with them to begin with, just to support them, make sure that they feel safe, check everyone out, make sure that they're good people, that they're going to look after my patient, things like that. Other ways that we would get it, often there's something called the Māori grapevine. So I would often ask my patients to share what services they've been to, what's worked really well for them, why they liked it. And then when I went to another patient, if I wanted to refer them there, I would often give that explanation as to what another patient found good about it. And that will often help with that buy-in as well. And if